Okay. So today I want to speak about a topic, and this topic really is, if we look around our lives, day-to-day lives, we see that the pressures of this life is increasing. People are more stressed out today than ever before. Crime is up. People are more worried. All these things are here right now. The government, they seem to be losing trust in government, and with that loss of trust in government, there becomes a clash kind of between government and the people as this is taking place. Now, we may think that as we look at it, that there's no hope, and of course we got to take up arms and go and do something about it personally. But what I would like us to know is, and I'm pretty sure you guys know this already, is that all these things have to come to pass. They're all part of the seasons. Okay, and when I say seasons now, I'm not necessarily talking about the seasons of hours, because those are minutes or seconds, because those are also seasons. Okay, I'm not talking about the seasons that you have as for summer, winter, autumn, and summer. I'm not talking about those seasons either, because even though those are seasons, you have other seasons that comes within years. You have seasons that comes within decades, millenniums, So you have all those that's coming, and you also have a season that moves through to the end of the age. And this is something that comes to us. The end of the age comes, and at the end of the age, many things must be taking place. And if you remember, through much tribulation, you and I are going to acquire everything that the Father has set up for us. If we do one thing, if we maintain our faith, and if we endure till the end of that time period, then we're promised something. And the Father's promises, they have to come to pass. There's no doubt about it. So in that, there's one thing that needs to take place. We have to believe, okay? And if you believe, then there's something that you're going to do about your belief system. If you believe it, then you apply yourself. And even those areas that you may find yourself weak and can't get it done right away, you find that you continue to press on and press on and press on until you come to the point that you start becoming stronger and stronger and stronger and get closer to the ideal that you have, okay, that you're looking out for. Well, all this is part of what you call the law of rhythm. That is above and is so below. And the science behind it, you might have heard of ebb and flow that they talk about. Is that life is always going to be ebbing and flowing. And it moves within years, seasons, and obviously it moves to the different stages of your development. These are also stages. These are also seasons. The stages of your development that's what it is. So Yahweh doesn't give us everything all at once. He takes us through different areas or different stages of our developments. And this is what you call seasons. And of course, this season is part of the natural law of rhythm. Everything is always on the up. And everything is not just going to be on the low. It's, if you look at the stock market and you see how the stock market moves, you look at it and you see for a successful stock, the trajectory is usually going up. But as it's going up, you see that it's ebbing and flowing. It has high points and it has low points. And it has high points and has low points. But as it keeps moving, you see it makes higher highs and it starts to make higher lows. So it doesn't go down as far as it used to, okay? When it comes down, it's higher than it usually is. And then it makes a new peak. And this is part of how things happen in our growth. Now, in it's crazy to just expect things to just move in a monotone area, and so everything just be fast forward, and there's no setbacks in anything. We have to expect that Yahweh allows both to come in, okay? And if we could get to the point now that we see and use the wisdom that Yahweh has provided in just what He set down in the inspiration of Scriptures, if we could use that, if we could truly believe that and allow that to flow within ourselves, then we're going to understand, and we're going to do one thing. We're going to actually relax. We're going to be able to relax and allow the maximum results of what your Father is allowing to flow within just your stream of your energy pattern comes in, and you and I could be at ease as this is happening. Even though things are going crazy and it may get better, if we could be in a place that we could trust and know that there's one judge that's over everything, and you and I are not in control of everything, then we lay our troubles down. We're able to lay that trouble down, those troubles down. Now, you have something in the natural pattern of man, not of man, of nature. You've heard of El Nino and La Nina, and these are also patterns. They're not patterns that are coming through every year, but they're patterns that's coming past every certain amount of cycles, certain cycles, they come around. And what they do, they cause things to become very irregular in the weather patterns. Both, El Nino does one thing, La Nina does the very opposite of it. So you have, these are things that's happening, and you see this in nature, that nature is creating, these things are created in nature also, and it's taking place every season in the season that it has been set up or ordained to come forth. Now, our first scripture that I want us to go to, okay, is going to be Ecclesiastes. Solomon was a very wise man, and he put a lot of stuff in a lot of understanding the things that he wrote about. There's a lot of understanding that's in that, okay? So in order for us to now settle in and move in the area that is going to cause maximum flow of our energy and maximum ease that carries as we are able to settle in where the Father, has us. And what I want you to try to imagine in your mind is see turmoil moving all around you in every area. There's turmoil, okay? And if you can't see the turmoil happening around you, just look and just see darkness all around you. And then see within your mind just a bubble, and see that bubble as pushing away, okay, or repelling all the trouble that you're having in your mind, that you're seeing, or all the darkness. It's repelling all the darkness all around it, and none of it could penetrate into that bubble. Then see yourself in that bubble. And what we do now, if we're trusted in Yahweh, we're going to be in that bubble in the same manner. Because whatever is going to take place, your Father has already ordained that or set that in motion. It's already ordered. And you and I can't do nothing about it anyway. So worrying is not going to help anyway. Now, what we do, we see see yourself inside, and everything is crashing against what you call the glass, okay, or the window of this bubble. But when it's coming, it seems like it's going to come and get you. It's going to come in through there. But really, when it comes, it can't move past that window. It can't pass the window to penetrate inside of the protected area that you are in. Now, if you remember in the scriptures, it talked about Job being in this protected area because Yahweh, okay, protected Job, that when Satan came and was asked about Job, Satan said, listen, no one could do anything to this guy because you put a hedge of protection around him. There's all kind of stuff happening around him, and you put him in that bubble, and you are protecting him. So, but remove that bubble and let me at him, and see what goes on. Well, the outside bubble was removed, but then there's another one that was inside of that Satan couldn't go past. Okay, and even when Satan came and Satan had the other bubble, the interior bubble moved away, there was still just a bubble that was going to make sure that his life was not going to be touched. Remember the story of Job. Okay? So you have the very same thing. And in this, you have to trust that there's nothing that you can do to remove the order that has already been set in this planet, and what you and I have to play, the roles that we have to play in this universe. Whether we want to try to go left or right, it doesn't really matter. We set up what we think our course is going to be, but there's another power that's going to make sure that the course that it wants, that's going to be taking place in the first place. So we got to think about that. So in Ecclesiastes, let's look at chapter 7, okay? And from chapter 7, let's look at verse 12. Let's start at verse 12. Okay, so I'm going to read a few scriptures here, maybe about 8 or 9. And in it says, "For wisdom is a defense." But this defense of wisdom is a little bit different than money, even though it says here, like money. Okay, in our lives in this three-dimensional world, we can think of it in that sense. Okay, like money is a defense. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it. Money can't. However, money is going to be a defense against many insecurities that may be here in the system of mankind. However, money cannot buy the security that wisdom brings, because that is going to penetrate into higher worlds, into higher frequencies, and it's going to give the individual who has it the power now to trust in the supreme judge. Now, in verse 13, it says, "Consider the works of Yahweh. Who can make straight what he has made crooked?" Who can? Okay, be pleased when things go well, but when times are bad, because you're going to have the ebb and the flow moving through, and we just got to be able to get to the place in that bubble that we're able to relax and trust. Okay, consider Yahweh has made the one as well as the other, and man will never know what lies ahead of him. Now in verse 15 it says, "I have seen everything during my transitory life. A just man perishing in spite of his righteousness." Well, he's not perishing forever. Okay? And here it says, "And a wicked man's life prolonged in spite of his wickedness." That's all under the plan of the judge. And you and I can't make a judgment in there, because we cannot judge nothing before its time. And because all of it is moving and it's being carried out in seasons. But as it comes to the end of the age, or it comes to that end of the season, then there's a harvest, if you remember. There's a harvest. And those who have endured, they're going to benefit in a certain manner in that harvest. And everyone receives the wages of whatever they have done at that point. So there's a time for everything. Now in 16, it says, "Do not be overly righteous." Okay, and so we could do that sometimes. We could think that, well, this certain situations, another man is doing something else, and he's not doing what the Creator says, and we want to go and judge that individual for what he's doing or what he's not doing. Okay? Keep in mind also that there's a power that's here, and that power has everyone where it wants that one to be, for that individual's learning, or for whatever that individual is going to cast upon somebody else on this planet to cause them to learn. Everything is under control. No one could move something out of place, because as it's showing us there, if Yahweh has made it crooked, who is going to make it straight? Nobody. When Yahweh wants to make that crooked thing straight, It's up to Yahweh. It's up to that perfect law that's moving forth, and the perfect law of rhythm that causes everything to ebb and flow in its own season. Okay, so don't be overly righteous, okay, nor make a god of wisdom. Why would you destroy yourself? Do not be wicked or play the fool. Why should you die before your time? It is well that you grasp one thing, but not let go of another. Notice what it says here, guys. The man who reverences Yahweh will escape both extremes. Now, if you remember when Yahshua was dealing with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and those in the contemporaries of his time, he told them, he said, tithing in mint and cumin is fine for you to do, but what you're doing here also, you're not seeing the weightier matters of the law. He said you should have done one of these without letting go of the other, because when it comes to love, kindness, compassion, mercy, that's all the things that you should have held on to, but you have moved these things that would raise the vibration, your frequency, and also teach the people in Israel the same thing, that their frequency would be raised up, and you have kept yourselves and them stuck on the letter of tithing mint and cumin. You should have went ahead and done what is in the law of Moshe, but you should have seen also that Yahweh is merciful, and you should be trying, your ideals should be moving into the area of where Yahweh is. Yahweh is kind. Yahweh is merciful. Yahweh is compassionate. He's the greatest lover. This is what our ideal is all about, and this is the nature that we have to try to apply within ourselves. Okay, so now in verse 19, remember now, the individual who's going to trust in Yahweh, reverences Yahweh, okay, respects that nature, that individual is going to escape the extremes of everything. He's not going to be overly righteous in certain things, and he's not going to be overly wicked. He's not going to carry out a law that's going to create damage for someone in their family when he could have mercy and forgive. So he's not going to be in that area. Okay, so now it says, wisdom strengthens the wise more than 10 rulers in a city. But there is not a just man upon the earth who does well all the times and never errs or sins, if you will. Now, you look at yourself now as the most just man on this planet, in light of what that last scripture just said. And know that you and I, we're going to have times that we don't do the things that we would like to do, or we don't do the things that the Father has set for us to do as in the capacity of what is called righteousness. But we're going to fall from that. And when you do fall from that, understand it, because it's all in the ebb and flow of your development. You have to see where you're weak at, and you have to see your failures for you to do something about it. And this is what your Father does. He creates circumstances and situations in our lives so we will move in that area so we could see the weaknesses that we have. Before we are taken from that, we're delivered from that, and take on to other times when things are moving well. Now, I'm going to go to Job, okay? And if you remember Job, in Job had a wife. And Job's wife, she was on him when he was going through certain things, and she was trying to tell him that he should curse Yahweh, die, and just get rid of everything. Okay? In chapter 2 and verse 10, here goes Job, who understands now, speaking to her in chapter 2 and verse 10. Okay, so he said, this is what he said to her. You talk like a nebula, should we accept success from Yahweh and not accept trouble? In all this, Eob didn't move one way or another. So Eob was still trusting in the supreme judge. And Eob is telling us something that we need to be in the same place. We could expect, when Yahweh is doing everything, allowing certain things to open up in our lives and everything is going well, yes, we're doing well. As far as our expectancy of what we want, how things goes well in our lives. But then the Father knows exactly what He needs to bring into our lives to bring us to the place that we could present ourselves before Him. We don't know that yet. So then He has to bring us down into that ebb and cause us to be disciplined so balance could be created within us and we could actually grow. These are the things that's happening. And we have to know that this is simply something that moves with the seasons. Okay? In life, there's going to be rhythm. There's going to be the ebb and flow, and everything will not be in the same area, the same frequency, the same vibration every day of our lives. It's going to change. Okay, so now we're going to go back to Ecclesiastes. Okay? Ecclesiastes. And in Ecclesiastes, guys, Solomon, remember Solomon was the wisest man that tested Yahweh, really, because Solomon, whether you know it or not, Solomon tested Yahweh. Okay? Solomon became privy to many things. He became privy to, this is not in your scriptures, as just, you could see it in there, but it's not just written to let you know that Solomon played with demonic forces and controlled them. It's not there. But if you know the facts that he had many foreign wives and that he was dealing with ceremonies with these wives also, and all these foreign wives, which were Gentiles, they served demons, you have to know that if Solomon is dealing with those things also, you got to know where Solomon was at. Okay? Now, but in all that, Yahweh didn't remove His Holy Spirit from Solomon, and Solomon was able to be successful in all those things that he came into. In 8, and in verse 7 here, this is Solomon telling everybody that nobody knows everything. No one is going to be able to tell the future accurately every time, because the future is really not set up just as a straight line, that it has to happen the way that prophecy says it has to happen. Okay? Prophecies change, and they change based upon the frequencies that are applied to them, and the frequencies that are applied to them comes from the actions of people. So where destruction may be set up to take place in a prophecy, if people change, the frequency that is applied to that prophecy changes also, and things move. Okay? Yahweh was going to deal a certain way with Nineveh, but then when Nineveh turned and did certain things, hey, that which was being applied to Nineveh, the negative frequency, it changes, and the same thing did not take place. So, just because something is written in prophecy, it doesn't mean that if people change their ways, that something else won't be taking place. So here in verse 7 of 8, we don't know exactly what's going to be happening, because, hey, that which is prophesied at a certain level can change. So it says here now, in verse 7, since he does not know, this is mankind here now, the future, who can tell him how things are going to be occurring in his life? Who could tell him? Well, no man is going to tell him because everything is up to the judge. And the judge is going to be applying circumstances and situations before everyone to get them through what will be happening in their lives. Because the judge already knows what's coming and is going to prepare each person for what's already coming. Now we're going to look at Samuel, 1 Samuel, and there's a scripture in 1 Samuel which for me reads well in this area right here, because it kind of tells us, hey, just let things go and do things in this particular manner right here. Okay, so in 1 Samuel chapter 3, okay, you know the little boy Samuel was in the presence of Eli at the temple because his wife had, his mom had dedicated him to the temple work. And Samuel later, after working at the temple under the high priest Eli, he became a judge over Israel, well trained. So things were happening to Samuel, and Samuel went to tell Eli what was going on. And so this we're going to pick up here in verse 18. It says, then Samuel told Eli everything. He hid nothing from him. So Eli said, hey, listen, he is Yahweh. He, that is Yahweh, can do anything that is right in his own eyes. Let him do what is good or proper in his own eyes, because no one could change this around. And this is where we have to see this. When it comes to starting to trust, okay, we have to, when we come to the place that we're going to be trusting in what's going on, this is where we have to set ourselves. So Samuel grew, and Yahweh was with him, and let none of his words fail. Nothing that Samuel was moving in at that point would have failed, because Yahweh was directing Samuel in a certain area, but his life was going up and down too, but Yahweh was allowing Samuel to see the conclusion of all matters, that he was there. And Samuel grew and grew and grew, and was able to come to the point that he trusted, even though things would move up and down in Samuel's life, like it does everybody, every man. Because nobody, including Samuel, okay, as we looked at before, is going to be totally righteous at all times, every day, every second. It's not going to be there. We're going to get caught up in low frequencies, and then we're going to have to understand that when that thing came in, now that we're past that, we have to look back on that and do our best to make adjustments so we're not overtaken by that same thing again later on in our path. Okay, we're going to go to, so keep in mind what Samuel is saying right there. Okay, or what the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel is saying, is telling us now that, hey, we have to allow Yahweh to work. Whatever is going to be beneficial, or what Yahweh deems as correct, we have to let it go to that. Everything. We have to let everything move to that. And so, since we don't know what's going to be taking place, and Yahweh, it knows, hey, we got to get into the passenger side and allow life to move. Allow the ebb and flow, everything to ebb and flow, so we could maximize with ease everything that is coming to us without creating an area of obstruction. Because we tend to get into our own way. So now, allowing Yahweh to do everything. Psalm 75. It's going to move over to Psalm 75. Okay? So if we're getting used to this concept, and we're going to be allowing this to be what takes place in each life, then we have to come to the area that, as I said before, at the beginning of this, that we have to allow the Supreme Judge to be judge. We have to allow the Supreme Judge to judge our course, judge what we're doing, and to create within our path adjustments to create balance in our lives. Okay? And that is what Yahweh is going to be doing, and that's what Yahweh does, period. He's your Father, and as you do certain things within your life, with your children, to bring balance to them or correction to them, well, this is your Heavenly Father. Your Heavenly Father has set you up on this planet. Even though you made the choice to descend into what you're descending into right now, you and I could not come except through that spirit being projected into this planet, and we couldn't have come without permission. So in verse 7 here, 75 verse 7, it says, but Yahweh is the judge. He is the judge over your circumstances that befalls you and I every day, and our circumstances that's down the line or what has already happened. He is going to be the judge of it. He knows what's coming. He knows where you and I need to be. He knows how we need to meet it. Okay? And we need to make sure that we understand that there's going to be an ebb and flow in life, and that we set ourselves in the area so we maximize everything that's coming to us and don't get in the way. Because we get in the way. That's what we do best. Okay. He brings one down and exalts another. For in the hand of Yahweh is a cup. Now this cup now, guys, it's not just the cup, it's what's put in the cup. Okay? And this cup is a vessel. And this vessel is actually, this cup, my cup runneth over. When the cup is running over, it's running over with the covenant that has been put there. With the foaming wine of Yahweh's wrath, the cup is filled, mixed with spices. From this he pours it out, and all the wicked of the earth will drink it down to its very dregs. Okay? All of them. But in this cup, if you are handling this cup, because Yahweh has a cup for that, when we don't do the right things, this cup is a vessel. You are the vessel. When we don't do certain things that should assist us in a smooth transition through life, we have to receive those things that is going to correct us. And so this is what the wicked, he says the wicked is going to get this. And this is poured out to them. But the wicked, their own vessels, their own beings, that's the cup. When David speaks, he said, my cup runneth over. He's talking about all the things that's within him that runs over to other people. And you and I, the same thing. The more that we do and live in the mode and the nature of Yahweh, and we're filled, this is your cup, you being filled. You are being filled with that spirit. Okay? And when you are filled, your cup runs over. And then he says, surely goodness and mercy is going to follow me. Well, that's what takes place for the individual who reverences Yahweh. His cup is filled, and that's what comes about. For the other individual who does not now, his cup is also filled. Because Yahweh has a cup, and Yahweh pours it out onto that individual, and whatever that individual has within himself, this is what he's carrying out. This is what spills out to other people. And in that, corrective measures comes into that individual's life based upon his own activities that he has within his own cup. Okay, now we're going to look at Lamentation, okay? And we're going to see here that nothing is going to be taking place, and you'll be able to see Eob here and all these other guys, unless Yahweh is going to put it in motion. None of it is going to take place unless he puts it in motion. Okay. So, Lamentations. So what I want us to see as we move on to this area here, okay, is that there is nothing that's going to be new under the sun. Nothing is going to be new under the sun. Everything that takes place, it's already been. And nothing could move outside of the hand of your Father. Everything has to be in that sequence. In Lamentations here, chapter 3, in verse 37, who is he who speaks and it comes to pass? If Yahweh has not commanded that. Who is it? No one. And when it says Yahweh has commanded it, it's talking about if Yahweh has not ordained this. If Yahweh has not put this thing in order. In verse 38, does not woe and righteousness take place at the command of Yahweh, our Father? At the things that He says? And all this is in perfect balance for the individual. All this is in perfect balance. Because what Yahweh is doing is bringing you and I into balance by the law of rhythm. Through the law of rhythm, He's bringing perfect balance that you and I could present ourselves before Him. The individual who reverences Yahweh, he's going to escape both extremes. He's not going to fall to the left. He's not going to fall to the right. He's going to be balanced right in the middle. That's what your Father wants. He wants this balance so you can walk the straight and narrow. Because wide is every other way. However, there's a straight and narrow path that everyone needs balance. It requires balance to be on this, and it requires balance to stay there. Now we're going to look at something that Yahweh said, or Moshe said here now in the law. And we're going to go to Deuteronomy 8:5. Okay? And this is something that takes place in all of our lives. So as Yahweh is bringing us to Him now, this is what He does. So, because we are all high and pompous in our own conceit. Well, that can't go before Yahweh, because when you go before Yahweh, it's not about you and I anymore, but it's about a body. Because we're returning to a family. We're returning to a star family, and and what we do. What does star do? What do stars do? Stars emit light. That's what they do. They emit light. Okay. The reason why when you return home, and Revelations is talking about there'll be no need for light because Yahweh is light. Well, that's because you're returning home, and you have no need for this artificial light all around because you're returning home to where you left, and you were light. Well, you're still light, but it's all inside this vessel that you have now, and that kingdom of light is in there. And you really can't see it until a certain time comes, and then you will see all of a sudden that you return. You become something that you have always been, but at this present time, you and I have been kept in chains of what they call darkness. And so we can't see who we really are. We really can't see it at this point. But we can understand it and conceptualize it when Yahweh brings those things to our minds and opens our minds up as far as this truth is concerned. So Yahweh is trying to bring balance to the whole thing. Bring balance to your life. Okay? In chapter 8 and verse 5 here of Deuteronomy, okay, it says, know then in your hearts that as a man disciplines his son, and what he is supposed to be disciplining his son for, or the purpose of disciplining his son, is to bring balance into his son's life. His son may be a wild person. Well, he brings correction to him, so balance could be seen in that son's life. So it says here, in the same manner in which Yahweh, in which a man does that, okay, in the same way, Yahweh your Father disciplines you, his sons, to bring balance into our lives, so that we could present ourselves to him, and we're not caught up in this whole wide is the way that leads to destruction, but we could come upon the straight and narrow path, and we could move towards it. Now, the majority is not going to move towards him. So, if you just have come to that point that you got on the path and you want to do this at this point in your life, hey, there is something that has been given to you above other individuals at this time for your attention to be in a different place than theirs. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not loved just as much and they're not on the same soul level as you are. It just means that there are different seasons that you guys are enjoying at this point. They may be enjoying a low, you may be enjoying a high. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you won't turn around to what they are right now and that they won't turn around to what you're doing right now. That's why Yahweh tells you, hey, don't do certain things to the Egyptians because you are doing the same thing that they were doing at a certain time. And so if you and I will turn around and afflict them, then we also move out of the stream pattern of the frequency that Yahweh grants to his children, his sons. Now, let's go up to verse 3. Okay? So we see here in verse 5, so we got to know certain things that Yahweh disciplines us. In verse 3 now, here goes the discipline. So he humbled you and I and allowed us to hunger. We have to want something here. Have you ever noticed when calamity hits somebody that all of a sudden, at that point, they remember their God? Well, it wasn't easy for Israel going through the wilderness. Israel was leaving the cosmopolitan nation of that age, Egypt. There was nothing greater, no greater richness. It was a superpower at that time. And they decided to leave out of there, but it wasn't all about hunky-dory, because when they left, all of a sudden that they found that they were missing all that Egypt had there that they now didn't have, and they were roughing it. And they began to murmur and complain. And Yahweh all during that time was humbling them so he could have them function as one unit. And that's what Moshe told them to do. He said, hey, listen, you've been doing one thing over here, these other guys been doing another thing over there. This clan has been doing X, Y, and Z, and these other brothers down here has been doing ABC. And I'm doing a different thing too. But we have to come together as one, because whenever we come together, believing the same thing, then we know that the kingdom of heaven comes within our collective efforts. And we could move things as a collective. Other than that, we can't work together if we're bouncing off each other and creating this, issues for one another. We can't. So we have to forget whatever we're doing that was right in our own eyes and function socially as a single unit, having the same law, believing the same thing. This is where it has to come to. So he humbled them and allowed them to eat manna. Well, this was something that Yahshua showed that, listen, this manna was a representation of something that I'm giving you. I'm giving you the spiritual manna, which you did not know of, nor did your fathers know of it, so he might make you to know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh does man live. Well, Yahshua is trying to say, listen here, your fathers ate in the wilderness, and they still died. So Yahweh couldn't have been telling you that the manna that they were receiving was going to keep you alive, because they all died. He said, what I'm giving you is the real manna, and that manna is going to give you life. But the life that he's talking about has nothing to do with the physical life. It has nothing to do with the physical life. It's life beyond that physical life. And Yahshua is telling you that you're not going to go. You're not going to die. You're going to put the physical body down because it's subject to breakdown anyway at this point. It's going to go. So what Yahweh is given is not just breath for you and I to breathe here. He's given something that's going to last. And it's going to last for a very long time, because what he's given you is the power of redemption to return to what you were previously. That's what he gives you. And he's telling you, in order to fathom what that is, you and I have to come together and function as a single unit, because that's what we're going to be when we're redeemed back into that unit. We're redeemed back into that family. No one goes outside of what Yahweh says. And they do it without murmuring. They do it and it's pleasing, because they have been disciplined and balance have come to their lives that they could be presented back into the family. Now, I'm going to Isaiah chapter 45. Okay, Isaiah chapter 45. In all this, Yahweh is allowing circumstances and situations to come into every individual's life. And in all that, he's loving every individual because they're all his children. And he's bringing them to the place that they will have a sense of balance. They will know him. That's what it's in your scripture. It says, all will know Yahweh, and he will be their father. Right? So he's bringing us to that. Now we're still on the path. We're still moving along the path. Okay? And so he's the creator of the light, and he's the creator of the light that's within you, and the creator of light that the family is all about, and you and I, we have to move back to that. Now, the darkness was created through his children also in lower dimensions. But after you reach certain higher areas of dimension, darkness dissipates. It's not there. Darkness is in our world, but it's a distortion of our own concept that we have darkness in here, or evil. Because in Yahweh, really, it all cancels out. There is no darkness, and there's going to be no evil. Now, in our experience, there's going to be that. In chapter 45, and verse 7, it says here, he said, I form light, and I create darkness. I make peace, and I create destruction. I, Yahweh, do all these things through my law, or the laws that governs everything. That's how it's done. Now, if we see now that all these things are done through natural forces and natural courses, and this is why the Bible now says Yahweh does this and Yahweh does that, but really, Yahweh is in you. So now, when you and I do things and we move outside of the governing principles that would bring light, guess what happens? We don't bring forth light, we are bringing forth darkness into that space. We're doing that. We're doing that. The kingdom of Yahweh is in your midst. You have control of it to a certain degree, whether you and I know about it or not. And dependent upon what's in our hearts and the things that we start speaking, we start to cause things to move. And the only reason why those things won't come about is if it's not in the will of the Father for it to come. There's no permission for that thing to go right now, so it's not going to go anywhere. It's like me trying to get something to happen, and that's just not in the cards to happen. Other than that, it's going to take place. Now, Ecclesiastes now, know in your seasons of all the ebb and flow. Yahweh creates light, He creates darkness, He brings prosperity, and He creates calamity. That's all in us exercising the power. That's already there through our hearts and minds. We are doing that. Now in Ecclesiastes 3, let's look at verse 1. Okay, in verse 1 it says, to everything there is a season. Yes, that's what we're talking about right now. To everything, including your development and my development, there is a season. A time for every purpose, including our development, inside that rhythm, the law of rhythm that's in the universe. Everything is going to ebb and flow. A time to be born and a time to die in this life. A time to plant and a time to uproot whatever was planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. And it's not just talking about building up a structure. It's talking about people too. Yahweh does this all the time. All in the effort of the same rhythm of the universe that has to play out, and in bringing balance to our lives. Bringing balance to us. And if we pay attention, we're going to get into that area, and we're going to assist ourselves in creating that balance instead of fighting against it. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Now, we could read this and go on and go on and go on, but we go back to the top right there, and Yahweh says, or Solomon says, to everything there is a season. And all, as you keep reading, is telling you about the ebbs and flows of life. A rhythm. There's a rhythm in the universe, and he calls it here season. Everything there is a season. He's telling you that there is a rhythm. And this rhythm, that's a natural course that ebbs and flows. And that's creating balance to everything under the sun. Guess who is under the sun? You and I. We're under the sun. So, now we're going to look at Jeremiah, and we're going to see here that Yahweh is doing something. Jeremiah chapter 32. Chapter 32. Let's look at verse 42. In verse 42 here it says, For this is what Yahweh says. Just as I have brought all this great calamity, is to get your attention, really. And if we pay attention and turn, because that's what happens. When calamity comes, everybody could find their God. Okay? So, he could bring calamity upon all the people. So I will bring upon them all the righteousness I have promised them. So right now, calamity may be coming, and remember, guys, before you enter into true life, in order to enter into life, you have to enter into tribulation. Because through tribulation, you acquire your real life. So it has to come. And this is called great calamity. For this is what Yahweh says, just as I have brought all this great calamity on this people, so I will bring them all the righteousness that I have promised them. What has been promised is life. Life not inside the lower realms here, but life where you came from. Life with the family again. Life with the family. Now, we're going to go to Yahshua's apostles, and we're going to go to James, the book of James, or Jacob. Okay? Jacob chapter 1. And we're going to read verse 12. So the calamity comes now. The calamity is going to be around. It's not going to go anywhere. But after we endure the calamity, there's something else that's there. That which is promised comes around. But we have to endure. Blessed is the man, verse 12, who endures temptations. In the calamity, guys, there's much temptations. Many things happen in your lives and my life that makes me want to skip and move outside of the ordained plan. I want to actually all the times alter the process and allow my thoughts to come in and actually create issues for me. That's what we do. Because when they come along, what they want to do is to disturb your mind. And when they disturb your mind, they cause you and I to forget the plan. The righteous man is going to escape both extremes. Remember, he's going to be he's going to be balanced. Now, if we're not in a place that we're balanced, guess what's going to be happening? Those situations are going to come to us over and over and over. And we may think that it's Charlie or it's Finster or whoever is causing this to come to our lives, but no, it's not. It's what's within us in the first place that's causing that. We're attracting the correction. We are attracting our needs. We are doing that. If we need to come to the Father and we need to have a certain principle developed within ourselves, guess what's going to happen? It's going to come to us. Guess how it's going to come to us? Well, it's going to come to us when the corrective measures that's there in the universe starts to move in our direction. Because we're not functioning in a high frequency, so we come low. And when we come low, all those things within the lower vibratory field, they're attached to us. And we then start doing something. And as we're doing things, okay, because we are being oppressed by that lower vibratory field, then we start transgressing laws. As we're transgressing laws, they move other forces into play to come into our space to create correction for us. So we're doing it. By our own actions, our own desires, our own passions, we're doing it. But if we could see both extremes and endure all that's coming, then there's something that Yahweh has promised for those who love him, it says. Okay, we're going to read that scripture again. Okay? Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been proved by that thing, tested, he will receive the crown and life, or the crown of life, whichever one you're going to put there, which Yahweh has promised to those who love him. If you love me, keep my commandments. To those who do what he says. For those who remain within the process. And you're in this life. Let's go to the Psalms and see what David says about this. Okay, Psalms chapter 30. So blessed is the man who perseveres under all the trials, because when he has stood the test, he is going to receive life. The same life that Yahweh has promised to those who will follow along and allow the plan of redemption to be played out in their lives based upon how he said it and not how we want it to be. Chapter 30, Psalms chapter 30, verse 11. 30 and verse 11. David here says, you have turned our mourning into dancing. That's what happens when we endure. This is what happens when we come off the low of the ebb and flow and we go to the highs of that ebb and flow. This is what's naturally occurring in the universal law of rhythm that your life has to move upon. So know that something is always going to be happening in your life, and it's not always going to be going well as we consider well. But it's going to make a downturn to things that we don't like. It doesn't mean that it's not great for us. It just means that we don't like it. Verse chapter 30 here. You have turned our mourning to dancing. You have put off our sackcloth and girded us with great joy. To the end that all our glory sings your praise. We will not be silent. We will give thanks to you forever. Yahweh is our Holy One. If we're understanding what that is saying, guys, Yahweh is not just the Holy One, but Yahweh is our Holy One. Yahweh is our unit that has been set apart. It's a family that has been set apart. Yahweh is one, and there's a certain time that all the world will know that they're one too. And with that, I'll go ahead and close it, knowing that, guys, everything that's happening in our lives is to bring us into the scope of that oneness.